Number 1 is the 1961 Ford F100 unibody. When Ford unveiled this truck, they truly believed they had reinvented the American pickup. Engineers thought they had finally found the formula that would replace the traditional truck. The idea sounded so smart that at first, almost nobody questioned it. Instead of building the cab and cargo bed as two separate pieces, Ford welded everything together into one giant steel body. One truck, one solid structure, one revolutionary idea. It looked cleaner, more modern, and more futuristic than anything sitting in a Chevrolet or Dodge dealership. Without the usual gap between the cab and the bed, the truck had smooth, flowing body lines that made it look years ahead of its competition. Ford advertised it as progress, a stronger body, a quieter ride, a more rigid structure, a better truck. At least, that's what everyone expected. Then people actually started using it, and that's when everything began to go wrong. Pickup trucks aren't bought to sit in showrooms. They're bought to work. Farmers filled them with hay. Contractors loaded them with lumber. Construction workers threw concrete bags, bricks, and heavy equipment into the bed every single day. That's exactly the kind of work the F100 was supposed to handle. But the unibody had a problem that engineers seriously underestimated. Because the cab and bed were permanently welded together, every heavy load put stress on the entire body instead of allowing different sections of the truck to move independently. Traditional pickups had separate beds for a reason. When carrying heavy cargo, the bed could flex slightly while the cab stayed relatively stable. Ford removed that flexibility. Instead, the entire truck twisted as one piece. And owners noticed something strange almost immediately. They would load the truck with building materials, drive to the job site, then suddenly discover that the driver's door didn't want to close properly anymore. Sometimes the passenger door became difficult to open. Sometimes the body gaps changed. Sometimes the doors rubbed against the frame. Some owners even had to unload the cargo before everything lined up correctly again. Imagine buying a heavy-duty pickup, then watching the body literally change shape because you used it exactly as intended. That wasn't innovation. That was frustration. The heavier the load became, the more obvious the problem was. The truck wasn't falling apart, it wasn't breaking in half, but it was flexing in ways that made everyday use surprisingly annoying. For people who depended on their trucks for work, confidence disappeared very quickly. Construction crews didn't care that the truck looked modern. Farmers weren't impressed by smooth styling. Contractors weren't interested in futuristic engineering. They wanted one simple thing: a truck that stayed solid when carrying heavy loads. And unfortunately, the unibody struggled to deliver exactly that. Word spread fast. Owners started talking. Dealers started hearing complaints. People who relied on their trucks every day began choosing the older, more conventional body style instead. Ford engineers realized they had learned a very expensive lesson. Sometimes the old design exists because it's already the best solution. Within a short time, Ford quietly abandoned the unibody experiment and returned to the traditional body-on-frame construction with a separate cab and cargo bed. That decision speaks for itself. More than 60 years later, nearly every full-size pickup truck still uses that same basic layout, not because manufacturers lack creativity, but because decades of real-world work proved it simply works better. Ironically, the truck that was supposed to replace conventional pickups ended up proving why conventional pickups existed in the first place. Today, the 1961 Ford F100 unibody becomes a rare collector's vehicle. People admire its clean styling, its unique appearance, and its fascinating place in automotive history. At classic truck shows, it attracts crowds because it looks unlike anything else from its era. But its legacy isn't one of engineering success. It's remembered as one of Ford's boldest experiments and one of its biggest engineering misfires. It promised to revolutionize pickups. Instead, it reminded everyone that looking futuristic and working hard are two very different things. And that's exactly why the 1961 Ford F100 unibody takes the #1 spot on this list. Because it wasn't just an unusual truck, it was a revolutionary idea that collided headfirst with reality. Ford tried to reinvent the pickup, and truck owners quickly showed them why some designs survive for generations.
Number 2 is the 1967 Dodge A100 pickup. The first time I saw this truck, I honestly couldn't believe Dodge had actually put it into production. It didn't look like a pickup truck at all. It looked like someone took a refrigerator, bolted 4 wheels underneath it, painted it in bright colors, and somehow convinced the public it was ready for work. Even by the strange standards of the 1960s, the A100 looked completely out of place. There was almost no hood, no long nose, no tough, muscular stance. Instead, the front of the truck was almost perfectly flat, giving it the appearance of a delivery van that had accidentally grown a pickup bed. Park it next to a Ford F100 or a Chevrolet C10, and it almost looked like it belonged to a different species. But the weird styling was only the beginning. The real surprise came the moment you climbed inside. Unlike a traditional pickup where the driver sits comfortably behind the engine and well behind the front axle, the A100 placed you almost directly over the front wheels. Your feet were practically at the front bumper, and there was barely any truck ahead of you. It was one of the strangest seating positions Dodge had ever offered. At first, it actually felt kind of futuristic. Then you started driving. Every pothole, every railroad crossing, every crack in the pavement, every speed bump, you felt all of it almost instantly. Because you were sitting almost on top of the front axle, the road never felt far away. Every bump came straight through the suspension and into the cabin, making rough roads feel even rougher. Some drivers joked that the truck didn't absorb bumps, it simply introduced you to every single one personally. And if that wasn't strange enough, Dodge decided to put the engine somewhere almost nobody expected. Instead of sitting under a hood like every normal pickup, the engine lived inside the cab, right between the driver and passenger seats. A large metal cover separated the seats, hiding the engine underneath. It saved space and made the truck shorter overall, but it also meant you spent every drive sitting just inches away from a hot, noisy engine. On cold winter mornings, that extra warmth might have been welcome. On summer, not so much. The cabin could become surprisingly hot, especially on long drives, and the constant sound of the engine meant quiet conversations were almost impossible. You didn't just drive with the engine, you shared the cabin with it. Space inside wasn't exactly generous either. Because the engine occupied the middle of the cab, there wasn't much room left for the people. Climbing across the seats was awkward, storage space was limited, and the whole interior felt cramped compared with more traditional pickups. Even the steering position felt unusual. Instead of sitting behind a long hood, you were practically looking straight down at the road through a huge windshield. It almost felt like driving a city bus or a delivery van instead of a pickup. Of course, Dodge had a reason for all this. By pushing the cab forward, engineers created a surprisingly long cargo bed without making the truck excessively long overall. That made the A100 useful for businesses working in crowded cities where maneuverability mattered more than towing massive trailers. For delivery companies and small businesses, that compact design actually had real advantages. But for traditional pickup buyers, it felt completely wrong. Truck owners expected toughness, they expected comfort on rough roads, they expected a familiar driving experience. The A100 delivered something entirely different. It looked different, it sounded different, it drove differently, and for many people, it was simply too different. Still, despite all its quirks, the Dodge A100 found a loyal following. Some buyers appreciated its clever packaging, while others simply loved how unique it was. It stood out wherever it went because there was nothing else on American roads that looked quite like it. Today, that's exactly why collectors enjoy it so much. It's not remembered because it was the best pickup. It's remembered because it refused to be a normal pickup. Looking at it now, it almost feels like Dodge let its engineers build whatever they wanted without asking whether customers would actually enjoy driving it. The result was one of the most unusual trucks America has ever produced. Awkward, cramped, noisy, and sitting almost on top of the front axle made every drive feel like an adventure you hadn't planned for. That's exactly why the 1967 Dodge A100 pickup earns the number 2 spot on this list. It wasn't just different from every other pickup, it completely ignored the rule book. And whether that was brilliant or bizarre is still something people argue about today.
Number 3 is the 1983 Dodge Rampage. I honestly have no idea what Dodge was trying to accomplish with this thing. The more I looked at it, the more confused I became. Was it supposed to be a pickup truck, a sporty coupe, an economy car, or all three at the same time? Because whatever the answer was, the Rampage never seemed to fully commit to any of them. At first glance, it doesn't even look like a real pickup. The front half is basically a small front-wheel drive economy car, complete with compact proportions, a low hood, and styling that looks more at home in a grocery store parking lot than on a construction site. Then you walk around to the back, and suddenly there's a tiny cargo bed. It's almost like Dodge built a normal hatchback, then someone walked into the design studio with a saw and said, "Let's cut the roof off the back and call it a truck." And somehow, that's exactly what happened. The Rampage was based on Dodge's front-wheel drive economy car platform, which immediately made it different from almost every American pickup on the market. Traditional trucks were built on strong frames. They had rear-wheel drive, big engines, heavy-duty suspensions. The Rampage had almost none of those things. Instead, it borrowed most of its engineering from a compact passenger car. That made it lighter, easier to drive, and much better on fuel than a full-size pickup. But it also meant there were serious compromises. Let's start with the cargo bed. Yes, technically it could carry things. A few bags of mulch, some tools, maybe a bicycle or camping gear. But if you showed up at a construction site with a Dodge Rampage, people probably wouldn't ask what you were hauling. They'd ask where your real truck was. The bed simply wasn't designed for serious work. It lacked the size, the strength, and the heavy-duty capability that buyers expected from an American pickup. Then there was the engine. Instead of a powerful V8 or even a strong 6-cylinder, the Rampage relied on a small 4-cylinder driving the front wheels. That was great if your goal was saving fuel. It wasn't so great if you wanted the performance or towing ability people associated with pickups. And because it was front-wheel drive, the entire driving experience felt completely different. Most truck owners were used to rear-wheel drive vehicles that pushed themselves forward with the rear tires. The Rampage pulled itself down the road. That may sound normal today, but in the early 1980s, it felt almost backwards for a pickup. Then there's the styling. Honestly, this might be the most confusing part of the entire vehicle. From the front, it looks like a sporty, compact coupe. From the side, it looks like someone forgot to finish building it. From the back, it's suddenly trying to convince you it's a pickup truck. No matter which angle you look at it, your brain keeps asking the same question: what exactly am I looking at? And that identity crisis became the Rampage's biggest problem. Truck buyers wanted something rugged. Car buyers wanted something stylish. Performance enthusiasts wanted something exciting. The Rampage tried to satisfy all three groups and ended up leaving all three slightly disappointed. It wasn't rugged enough to replace a real truck, it wasn't fast enough to compete with true sports cars, and it wasn't practical enough to become the perfect family car. It simply existed somewhere in the middle, trying to do everything at once. Ironically, that's exactly what makes it interesting today. Because if you look around now, you'll notice that car-based utility vehicles have become incredibly popular. Modern manufacturers build crossovers, lifestyle pickups, and compact utility vehicles that follow a very similar philosophy. In many ways, the Rampage was trying that formula decades earlier. The timing just wasn't right. Buyers weren't ready. People still expected pickups to be big, powerful, body-on-frame machines that could survive years of hard labor. The Rampage represented a completely different idea, one where a pickup could be economical, comfortable, easy to drive, and affordable to own. Unfortunately, most Americans weren't asking for that yet. Today, the Dodge Rampage has become one of those forgotten automotive oddities that collectors love because it's so unusual. It isn't famous because it dominated sales. It's remembered because it's impossible to confuse with anything else. The 1983 Dodge Rampage wasn't really a truck. It wasn't really a sports car. It wasn't really an economy car either. It was all of those things mixed together into one strange experiment that left people scratching their heads the day it arrived, and it's still doing exactly the same thing more than 40 years later.
Number 4 is the 1973 Ford Courier. Calling this thing a pickup truck almost feels like a little bit of a stretch, because when you first see the Ford Courier sitting next to a traditional American truck, the size difference is almost impossible to ignore. It looks like someone took a normal pickup, accidentally put it in a dryer for a few hours, and pulled it out several sizes smaller. Everything about it feels miniature. The body, the engine, the cargo bed, even the attitude. While full-size American pickups of the 1970s were built to look tough, powerful, and ready for anything, the Ford Courier looked like it belonged in a completely different category. Park it beside a Ford F100 or a Chevrolet C10, and the Courier almost disappears. It looks like the little brother that showed up to the family photo, but nobody invited. And that was exactly why so many traditional truck buyers didn't know what to think about it. For decades, American pickups had followed the same formula: big engines, long hoods, heavy frames, large beds. The bigger the truck, the more capable it appeared. Then Ford introduced the Courier and completely changed the conversation. Instead of building another giant American workhorse, Ford created a compact pickup designed for a changing world. The early 1970s were a difficult time for large vehicles. Fuel prices were rising, insurance costs were increasing, and many drivers were starting to question whether they really needed a massive truck just to handle everyday transportation. Suddenly, smaller vehicles started making more sense, and that's where the Courier came in. The idea was simple: give people a pickup truck experience without the size, cost, and fuel consumption of a full-size model. On paper, it sounded smart. In reality, many people thought it looked almost too small to be taken seriously. The biggest problem was the engine. Compared with the powerful V8s found in traditional American pickups, the Courier's small four-cylinder engine felt almost weak. It was economical and reliable, but it wasn't built for serious hauling. If you needed to carry heavy equipment, tow large trailers, or do demanding work every day, the Courier was not the truck you wanted. It could handle light jobs, tools, small loads, weekend projects, basic transportation, but ask it to perform like a full-size pickup, and it quickly reminded you that it was built for a different purpose. The cargo bed became a major point of criticism. Technically, yes, it had a pickup bed, but compared with the huge beds on American trucks, it looked like almost a storage tray. You couldn't throw in the same amount of lumber, equipment, or materials that you could with a traditional pickup. For serious workers, it felt more like a compromise than a replacement. And that created the biggest question surrounding the Courier. Was it really a truck? Because it had the shape, it had the open bed, it had the pickup name, but it didn't have the size and toughness people expected from an American pickup. The driving experience was also completely different. Instead of feeling like you were commanding a heavy-duty machine, the Courier felt more like driving a small car with extra cargo space. It was easier to park, easier to maneuver, and much less intimidating for everyday drivers. For some people, that was actually the entire point. Not everyone needed a giant truck. Some people just wanted something practical, something affordable, something that could carry a few things without drinking fuel like a full-size pickup. And in that sense, the Courier was actually ahead of its time. Because decades later, compact pickups became much more accepted. The idea that a smaller truck could be useful became normal. But in 1973, many Americans weren't ready. They still believed a real truck needed to look big. It needed a powerful engine. It needed a strong presence. The Courier looked like it was trying to prove that smaller could be smarter, but many buyers simply saw it as too small, too weak, too different. Today, the Ford Courier is remembered as an important turning point in pickup history. It helped introduce the idea that trucks didn't always have to be massive machines. It opened the door for a new generation of compact pickups that focused on efficiency and practicality.
But at the time, it was often treated like the odd one out. A tiny truck in a world obsessed with big trucks. A pickup that looked like it had shrunk in the wash. And that's exactly why the 1973 Ford Courier deserves its place on this list. It wasn't terrible because it was useless. It was strange because it arrived before people understood why they might want something smaller. It was a truck that looked too little, felt too different, and struggled to convince traditional buyers that less could actually be enough.
Number 5 is the 1976 Chevrolet El Camino Classic. I think the biggest question about this vehicle is the same question people have been asking for decades. What exactly is this thing? Because Chevrolet looked at the El Camino and called it a pickup truck, but many truck owners looked at it and saw a confused muscle car carrying groceries. It was half coupe, half pickup, half performance car, and somehow it never felt completely successful at being any of them. The El Camino was one of those vehicles that tried to combine two completely different worlds. Chevrolet wanted to give buyers the sporty feeling of a passenger car while still offering the usefulness of an open cargo bed. Sounds like the perfect combination, right? A car you could enjoy on the weekend, a truck you could use during the week. The best of both worlds. But the reality was much more complicated, because the El Camino had a serious identity problem from the moment it arrived. Look at the front, and it looks like a classic American coupe. The long hood, the low roofline, the comfortable passenger cabin, the stylish profile. Everything about the front half says this is a personal performance car. Then you move toward the back, and suddenly there's a pickup bed. It almost looks like someone took a Chevrolet muscle car, drove it into a truck factory and said, "Can you add a cargo area before the end of the day?" The result was unique, but also confusing. Traditional pickup buyers wanted toughness. They wanted a vehicle that looked ready for hard work, something with a tall stance, strong frame, and the ability to carry serious loads. The El Camino didn't really offer that. The bed was useful, but it was smaller and less practical than a traditional pickup. You could carry tools, groceries, camping equipment, and smaller loads, but it wasn't the kind of vehicle you brought to a construction site when you needed a serious workhorse. It was a truck that could carry things, not necessarily a truck built for heavy work. And that difference mattered, because in the 1970s, pickup trucks had a very specific image. They were machines for farmers, builders, and workers. They were supposed to be rugged. The El Camino felt more like something owned by someone who wanted the image of a truck without giving up the comfort of a car. And honestly, that was exactly its appeal. The driving experience was much closer to a passenger car than a traditional pickup. You sat lower, the ride was smoother, the handling felt more familiar. It didn't feel like you were driving a piece of heavy equipment. Instead, it felt like you were driving a stylish coupe with a surprisingly large trunk behind you. But that created another problem. It wasn't really a sports car either. Earlier El Caminos had stronger connections to the muscle car era, especially when equipped with powerful engines. But by 1976, things had changed. The golden age of American muscle was fading. Emissions regulations were stricter. Fuel economy became more important. Performance numbers were dropping. The El Camino still had the look, but it no longer had the same aggressive personality that made classic muscle cars legendary. So now it had another identity problem. It wasn't tough enough to replace a truck. It wasn't exciting enough to replace a muscle car. It wasn't practical enough to replace a family vehicle. It existed somewhere in the middle, and that middle ground confused a lot of people. Some buyers loved it because it offered something different. They could drive comfortably during the week, carry supplies when needed, and still have something that looked stylish. But others simply couldn't understand the point. Why buy a truck that couldn't haul like a truck? Why buy a car that had a bed instead of a proper trunk? The El Camino spent years answering questions nobody could agree on. But maybe that's also why it became memorable. Because while many vehicles disappear because they are ordinary, the El Camino survived because it was unusual.
It created its own category. It didn't follow the rules. It didn't fit neatly into one group. And even today, when someone sees one at a car show, the reaction is usually the same. Wait, is that a car or a truck? That confusion is part of its charm. The 1976 Chevrolet El Camino Classic wasn't perfect. It wasn't the strongest pickup. It wasn't the fastest muscle car. It wasn't the most practical everyday vehicle. But it was something completely different. A strange experiment that somehow became an icon. And that's exactly why it belongs on this list. Because for decades, the El Camino made people stop, stare, and ask the same question. What is this thing supposed to be?
Number 6 is the 1960 Ford Econoline pickup. The first time you see this thing, your brain almost refuses to accept that it's a pickup truck, because it doesn't look like one. It looks like Ford took a small delivery van, removed half the body, added a tiny cargo bed, and somehow decided that this was the perfect recipe for a working pickup. And the strangest part? They actually sold it. The Econoline pickup was one of the most unusual experiments Ford ever brought to the American truck market. It ignored almost every traditional pickup design rule and replaced them with a completely different philosophy. Instead of a long hood, instead of a powerful front-mounted engine, instead of a classic truck shape, Ford created something that looked more like a refrigerator on wheels. The front end was almost completely flat. There was no long nose stretching ahead of the driver, no big engine compartment, and no aggressive truck face that made people think of heavy-duty work. The windshield was pushed all the way forward, creating one of the strangest driving positions ever seen in an American pickup. Because the driver wasn't sitting behind the front wheels, the driver was practically sitting on top of them. Imagine climbing into a truck and realizing your feet are almost touching the front bumper. There is almost nothing between you and the road ahead. A traditional pickup makes you feel protected by the hood and engine compartment. The Econoline made you feel like you were sitting at the very front of the vehicle, leading the way. For some drivers, that was an interesting new experience. For others, it was extremely uncomfortable. Every bump in the road felt much closer. Every pothole felt more dramatic. Every rough patch of pavement reminded you that there was almost no vehicle between you and the front axle. The truck didn't absorb the road the way a traditional pickup did. It delivered the road directly to you. And then there was the engine placement. Instead of hiding the engine underneath a long hood, Ford placed it underneath the cab. That meant the engine was literally inside the driving area, underneath a cover between the seats. It was clever packaging. By moving everything forward, Ford created a compact vehicle with a useful amount of cargo space while keeping the overall size very small. For city businesses, delivery companies, and small operators, this was actually a smart idea. The Econoline could squeeze into tight spaces where larger pickups struggled. It was easier to park. It was easier to maneuver. It took up much less room. But for traditional pickup buyers, it created a completely different experience. You didn't feel like you were driving a tough American truck. You felt like you were operating a delivery vehicle. The engine noise was much closer. The heat from the engine could make the cabin uncomfortable. And because the mechanical parts were directly underneath you, every drive reminded you that this was not a normal pickup. You weren't separated from the machine. You were sitting right on top of it. The interior also felt unusual. The seating position was more upright. The steering wheel placement was different. The entire cabin had a commercial vehicle feeling rather than a relaxed driving position people expected from a Ford truck. It was practical, but it wasn't exactly comfortable. And then there was the appearance. This might have been the biggest challenge. Pickup trucks in America were emotional purchases. People didn't just buy them because they needed cargo space. They bought them because trucks represented strength, independence, and capability. A Ford F-Series looked like it could survive anything. The Econoline looked like it was designed to deliver packages. It was small, it was flat, it was unusual. Some people even joked that it looked like a refrigerator that had escaped from a kitchen and somehow ended up on the road.
But despite all the criticism, the Ecoline pickup actually introduced ideas that would become much more common later. Compact commercial vehicles, cab-over designs, maximum interior space in a small footprint. Modern delivery vans use many of the same principles today. Ford was experimenting with a future that simply arrived too early. The problem was that American buyers in 1960 still wanted traditional trucks. They wanted big hoods, they wanted powerful engines, they wanted something that looked ready for hard work. The Ecoline offered efficiency and practicality instead, and many people simply weren't ready for that change. Today, the 1960 Ford Ecoline pickup is remembered as one of the strangest trucks ever built. Not because it was completely useless, not because Ford had a terrible idea, but because it was a futuristic concept trapped in the wrong era. It was a pickup that felt like a van, a truck that drove like nothing else, a vehicle where the driver sat almost on top of the front bumper and the engine lived inside the cabin. It looked bizarre, it felt strange, and it definitely wasn't what most people expected from a pickup. But that's exactly why the 1960 Ford Ecoline pickup deserves a place on this list. Because sometimes the weirdest vehicles aren't forgotten because they failed. They're remembered because they were brave enough to be different.
Number 7 is the 1957 International Harvester Metro pickup. The first time you see this thing, you might honestly wonder if someone made a mistake at the factory, because this doesn't look like a normal pickup truck. It looks like a delivery truck that woke up one morning, realized it needed a cargo bed, and decided to reinvent itself overnight. A giant rolling bread box, a small commercial van, a work vehicle that somehow ended up wearing a pickup truck costume. And yes, it was a real production vehicle. The International Harvester Metro pickup was one of those ideas that sounded interesting on paper, but became much stranger when people actually had to live with it. At a time when American pickups were becoming symbols of strength and capability, International went in a completely different direction. Instead of creating a truck with a long hood, aggressive styling, and a powerful presence, they built something focused almost entirely on practicality. The design was simple. Very simple. The front was flat, the body was tall and boxy, the windows were large. The shape looked more like a delivery vehicle designed to carry bread, milk, or packages through city streets than a pickup meant for farms or heavy work. And that immediately created its biggest problem. Pickup buyers cared more than just carrying cargo. They wanted a truck that looked tough, something that felt powerful, something that could handle anything thrown at it. The Metro pickup didn't give that impression. It looked more like a commercial appliance than a rugged American workhorse. Park it next to a Chevrolet Task Force pickup or a Ford F-Series from the same era, and the difference is almost hilarious. The other trucks looked ready for adventure. The Metro looked ready to deliver sandwiches. But the strange appearance was only part of the story. The driving experience was even more unusual. This truck was built for function, not excitement. It was heavy, it was slow, and it was definitely not the kind of vehicle that made drivers feel powerful behind the wheel. The engine had one main job: move the truck. Not create excitement, not provide impressive acceleration, just get the work done. And because the Metro pickup was designed around commercial use, speed was never the priority. Acceleration was relaxed. Passing other vehicles required patience. Highway driving was not exactly its favorite activity. It was the kind of truck where you learned to plan your moves ahead of time. You didn't rush, you didn't push it, you simply accepted that this was a machine built for steady work, not quick performance. The size and weight also affected the way it handled. The tall body and heavy construction gave it a very different feeling compared with lighter pickups. It felt more like operating a small delivery vehicle than driving a traditional truck. Every corner reminded you that this thing was designed around cargo space, not sporty handling. But to be fair, the Metro pickup did have some advantages. The boxy design created plenty of usable interior and cargo space. The large windows provided good visibility. And for businesses that needed a compact commercial vehicle with pickup capability, it offered a unique solution.
The problem was that it was solving a problem most regular pickup buyers didn't have. Farmers, contractors, and everyday pickup owners wanted something more versatile. They wanted a truck that could work hard and still feel like a truck. The Metro pickup was specialized. It had one mission: carry things around town. And outside that mission, its weaknesses became obvious. It was too heavy, too slow, too unusual, and too far away from what people expected a pickup truck to be. That's why it never became a major success with the general public. It was different, but different doesn't always mean better. Sometimes a vehicle can be innovative, practical, and completely unique, yet still fail because it doesn't connect with what buyers actually want. Today, the 1957 International Harvester Metro pickup is remembered as a fascinating piece of automotive history. Collectors love it because it's rare and because there is nothing else quite like it. At car shows, it instantly attracts attention because people have to stop and ask, "Wait, what exactly is that?" And maybe that is the perfect summary of the Metro pickup. It wasn't a terrible idea. It wasn't completely useless, but it was a truck that looked like a delivery van, drove like a heavy box, and tried to create a category that almost nobody was asking for. The 1957 International Harvester Metro pickup proved one thing. Sometimes the biggest problem with a vehicle isn't that it's bad, it's that it's just too different from what people actually wanted.